A long time ago, in a small village between two great mountains, there lived a kind and beautiful girl named Ako. Everyone in the village loved her because she was always ready to help, always smiling, and never spoke badly about anyone. People called her the Golden Child because her heart was as pure as gold. But Ako's life was not easy. Her mother had died when she was just a baby. Her father, Kofi, was a hard-working farmer who loved his daughter very much. He tried his best to raise Aku alone, but the village elders often reminded him a man cannot raise a child alone. A girl needs a mother to guide her. At first, Kofi ignored them. He believed he could take care of Aku by himself. But as time passed, he saw the truth in their words. Aku was growing up, and there were things he could not teach her. She needed a mother's care, a woman's touch. So after much thought, Kofi decided to remarry. He chose Amma, a woman from a nearby village. She was beautiful and soft-spoken, and at first, she treated Aku kindly. She smiled at her, braided her hair, and gave her sweet words. "My dear Ako, you are like a daughter to me," she would say, and Kofi was happy, thinking he had made the right choice. But Ama's kindness was only on the surface. Deep inside, she was filled with jealousy. The people of the village always spoke highly of Ako. "That girl is different," they would say. "Her heart is pure. She is respectful and hardworking." Even visitors who passed through the village noticed her. Some would stop Kofi on the way to his farm and say, "You are lucky to have such a daughter. She will bring you great blessings one day." Amma hated hearing this. She had expected people to praise her as Kofi's wife, but instead, all she ever had was Ako, Ako, Ako. The jealousy in her heart grew every day, and soon she could no longer hide it. One evening, after Ako had finished her chores, she sat outside, enjoying the cool breeze. The village children ran past, laughing and playing. Ako smiled as she watched them. Just then, Amma stepped out of the hut and called her. "Ako, come inside," she said in a sharp voice. Ako quickly got up and followed her. When she stepped inside, she saw that her father was not around. Amma closed the door and turned to face her. For the first time, I could notice something strange in Amma's eyes, something cold and unkind. "Listen to me, girl," Amma said, lowering her voice. "I am your father's wife, not you. You are nothing but a little girl. You may have fooled the village with your sweet face and kind words, but you cannot fool me." Ako's heart pounded in her chest. She did not understand why Amma was speaking to her like this. "But Mama Amma, I have done nothing wrong," Ako said softly. Amma took a step closer, her eyes burning with envy. "From today, you will not act like a princess in this house. You will not eat before me, and you will not rest when I am working. You will learn your place." Before Aku could say another word, Amma grabbed her by the arms and dragged her to the kitchen. "From now on, you will do all the chores in this house. You will sweep, fetch water, cook, and wash my clothes. If you refuse, you will not eat." Tears filled Aku's eyes, but she held them back. She knew that if she cried, it would only make Amma happier. So without a word, she picked up the broom and began sweeping. Outside the village was filled with laughter and joy, but inside the small hut, Aku's life was changing forever. And this was just the beginning. From that day on, Aku's life changed completely. Before Amma came into their home, Ako had lived a happy life. Even though her mother was gone, her father had always treated her with love and care. He made sure she ate well, had clean clothes, and never overworked herself. But now everything was different. Amma made Aku wake up before the sun rose. While the rest of the village was still sleeping, she had to fetch water from the stream, sweep the compound, and prepare breakfast. But she was not allowed to eat until Amma had finished eating. Sometimes, Amma would purposely leave only a few scraps of food for her. Eat quickly, Amma would say, watching her with cold eyes. You still have plenty of work to do. I could never complain, even when she was hungry, even when her hands ached from washing heavy pots and carrying firewood. She never spoke back. She believed that if she remained patient, things would get better. But things only got worse. Amma started looking for new ways to make Ako's life miserable. One day, after Ako had finished washing Amma's clothes, she spread them out in the sun to dry. A strong wind came and blew one of Amma's favorite wrapper into the dirty. When Amma saw it, she was furious. You useless girl, she shouted. You did this on purpose. You want to ruin my clothes so people will laugh at me, isn't it? No, Mama Amma, Ako said quickly. It was the wind, I will wash it again. But Amma was not listening. She grabbed a long stick from the ground and struck across the back. You are an evil child, she hissed. You pretend to be good, but I know the truth. You want to take my place in this house. You will suffer in my hands. Tears streamed down Ako's face, but she did not fight back. She picked up the wrapper and washed it again, scrubbing even harder this time. Her only comfort was her father, Kofi. Whenever he was around, Amma acted sweet and loving towards Ako. She would smile and say, Ako is such a good girl. She helped me so much. Kofi, not knowing the truth, would smile proudly. That is my daughter, he would say. She is a blessing. Ako wanted to tell him the truth. She wanted to run to him, cry in his arms and tell him how Amma was treating her. But Amma was clever. Every time Kofi was around, she was careful to never raise her voice at Ako. She made sure there were no signs of the beating on Ako's body. And most of all, she had a warning for Ako. One night, after Kofi had gone to sleep, Amma pulled Ako inside and whispered in her ears, If you ever tell your father what I do to you, I will make sure he suffers. I will take all his happiness away. Do you want to be the reason your father is miserable? Ako's heart ached. She could not bear to see her father unhappy. So she stayed silent. And because of that silence, her suffering continued. But fate was watching, and soon the world will see the truth. As the day turns into weeks, and weeks into months, Aku's suffering only grew worse. Amma had turned her into nothing more than a servant. But she did not stop there. She wanted Aku to feel completely worthless. One morning, while Aku was sweeping the compound, Amma called her inside. She was standing by the fire, stirring a pot of hot porridge. The smell filled the air, making Aku's stomach rumble. She had not eaten since the previous afternoon. Amma turns to her with a wicked smile. You must be hungry, Aku, she says sweetly. Come, take this porridge and eat. Aku looked at her in surprise. Amma had never offered her food so kindly before. She hesitated, wondering if it was a trick. But before she could speak, Amma lifted the steaming pot and suddenly thrust it towards her. Aku jumped back in shock as a few drops of hot porridge splashed onto her arm. The burning pain made her bite her lips to stop from crying out. Amma narrowed her eyes. You see how foolish you are. She sneered. I was only testing you. If you were wise, you would have known I was lying, but you're just a stupid girl. She placed the pot back on the fire and laughed. Now go and fetch firewood and don't take all day or you will sleep outside tonight. Aku held back tears as she hurried out of the house. The burning sensation on her arm still hurt, but she forced herself to keep going. She had learned long ago that crying would not help her. As she walked to the forest to gather firewood, she thought about her father. If only he knew what she was going through. But she remembered Amma's warning. If she told him, he would suffer, and that was something she could not allow. While picking up stick, she suddenly heard a soft rustling in the trees. She turned quickly, her heart pounding. Was it an animal? A wild beast? Then she saw it. A small beautiful bird with feathers as white as fresh snow. It perched on a branch, watching her with bright, intelligent eyes. Aku stared at the bird, feeling a strange sense of comfort. She did not know why, but she felt like the bird was there for a reason. Just then, the bird chirped softly and flew down, landing right in front of her. Aku held her breath as it picked up a small stick with its beak and dropped it at her feet. Her eyes widened in wonder. Was this bird trying to help me? Slowly, Aku bent down and picked up the stick. The bird chirped again and flew to another spot, picking up another small branch and dropping it nearby. Aku smiled for the first time in a long time. Maybe she was not as alone as she thought. For the next few minutes, the bird continued to help her gather wood, making the work much faster. When they were done, Aku picked up the bundle of stick and turned to thank the bird. But it was gone. She looked around, but there was no sign of it. It has disappeared, as mysteriously as it had come. As she walked back to the house, a new thought entered her mind. Maybe fate had not abandoned her. After all, maybe help would come from unexpected places. Little did she know, this small moment was the beginning of something far greater that she could imagine. That night, as Aku lay on her thin mat in the corner of the hut, she could not stop thinking about the strange bird. It had appeared just when she needed help, and it had left just as suddenly. Was it just a normal bird? Or was it something more? She wanted to believe it was a sign that her suffering would end one day. But looking at the dark ceiling of the hut, hearing Amma snoring peacefully in her bed, Aku felt trapped. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Amma woke Aku with a sharp kick. Get up, lazy girl, she barked. There is work to do. Aku sat up quickly, rubbing her tired eyes. She had barely slept. Fetch water, wash the clothes, sweep the compound, and make my breakfast, Amma ordered. And don't even think of eating before I do, or you will regret it. Aku simply nodded and got up. There was no point in arguing. She took the water pot and made her way to the village stream. As she walked, the morning air was cool, and she enjoyed a few moments of peace before returning to her harsh reality. When she reached the stream, she bent down to fill the pot, and then she heard it, a soft gentle voice, almost like a whisper. Do not be afraid, golden child. Your suffering will not last forever. Aku gasped and looked around, but there was no one there, only the rustling trees and the sound of the flowing water. Her heart pounded. Had she imagined it? She turned back to the water and her eyes widened. There, in the reflection, was the white bird from the forest. But when she looked up, it was not in the trees, only in the water's reflection. Aku's hands trembled. The bird's small beak opened, and again she heard the soft whisper, "The wicked shall not prosper forever. Be strong, for the day of justice is coming." Before Aku could speak, a ripple spread across the water, and the reflection vanished. She quickly looked around again, but there was no sign of the bird. Aku clenched the water pot tightly, her heart racing. Was she dreaming? Or had she truly heard those words? For the first time in a long time, hope twinkled in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, her suffering would not last forever. Aku returned home with the heavy pot of water balanced on her head. As she stepped into the compound, Amma was already waiting for her. Amma's crossed and eyes filled with impatience. "You are as slow as a tortoise." Amma snapped. "Did you stop to rest on the way?" "No, Mama Amma," Aku answered quietly. She set the pot down and hurried to start her other choice. As she swept the yard, her mind kept going back to the voice she had heard at the stream. Was it real? Or she had imagined it? She had no time to think about it for long. Amma was in a full mood that day, and everything I could do seems to annoy her. If a single speck of dust remained on the floor, Amma shouted. If the clothes were not folded perfectly, Amma hissed. By the time the sun was high in the sky, Aku was exhausted. But Amma was not done with her. That evening, as Aku was setting the firewood for dinner, Amma suddenly spoke in a strangely sweet voice. "Aku, my dear child," she said, smiling. Aku froze. Amma never spoke to her kindly unless she was up to something. Slowly, she turned to face her stepmother. "Yes, Mama Amma. Tomorrow is a special day," Amma said, her voice dripping with false kindness. "There is a great festival in the next village, and your father and I will be going. We will be gone all day." Aku's heart lifted slightly. If Amma was gone for the whole day, that meant she would have some peace. But Amma's next words shattered that hope. "While we are gone, you will go deep into the forest and fetch firewood," Amma ordered. "Not from the edge of the forest. I want you to go far inside, where the best wood is." Aku's stomach tightened. Everyone in the village knew that the deep forest was dangerous. Strange things were said to happen there. Spirits, wild animals, and things that had no name. She swallowed hard. "Mama Amma, I can fetch firewood from the unusual place. There is plenty there." Amma's smile vanished, her eyes burning with anger. "Are you questioning me?" she snapped. "Do as I say, and do not return until you have gathered enough wood to last a month." Aku lowered her head. "Yes, Mama Amma." Amma smirked. "Good. That should keep you busy," humming to herself. Aku's hands trembled as she held onto the fire. She could feel it in her heart. This was not just about firewood. Amma wanted to get rid of her. She wanted Aku lost in the forest, never to return. And Aku was powerful to stop her. The next morning, Aku woke before dawn. The weight of Aku's words still sat heavy in her chest. She knew that today could be the day she never returned home. She quietly fetched her small sack and tied a calabash of water to her waist. If she was going deep into the forest, she needed to be prepared. By the time the sun rose, Amma and Aku's father were already preparing to leave for the festival. Amma was dressed in her finest wrapper, her face glowing with excitement. "Remember what I told you," Amma said, her voice sharp. "Go deep into the forest and do not return until you have enough wood." Aku simply nodded. She turned and began walking towards the forest, her heart pounding with every step. She reached the edge of the trees, a place she had been many times before. Usually, this was where she gathered wood, but today she had to go further. As she stepped past the familiar trees and into the deep part of the forest, the air changed. It became cooler, darker. The thick canopy of trees blocked out most of the sunlight. The deeper she went, the quieter everything became. There were no voices of villagers, no children playing, not even the sound of birds. Only the sound of her own footsteps. I could grip the small knife tied onto her waist. It was not much, but it gave her a little comfort. After walking for what felt like hours, she finally found a place where dry wood was scattered all around. She set down her sack and began gathering sticks, trying to walk as fast as possible. Then she heard it, a rustling sound. She froze, her heart pounding. She looked around, but there was nothing, just trees and shadows. She took a deep breath and continued gathering wood. Then, snap, a branch broke between her. She spun around. Nothing. The forest was silent again. Ako's finger tightened around her knife. Something was watching her. She picked up her sack and slung it over her shoulder. She had enough food. It was time to leave. As she turned to go, a soft whisper floated through the air. Golden child. Ako gasped. She looked around widely, but there was no one. Then, just ahead of her, she saw it. The white bird, the same one from before. It was perched on a low branch, its bright eyes watching her. Ako's breath came fast. She took a step forward and the bird fluted its wings. Then, in a voice no louder than the wind, it spoke again. Do not go back the way you came. Ako's blood ran cold. What did that mean? Before she could think, the bird suddenly flew up, disappearing into the trees. Ako stared after it, her heart pounding. Something told her she should listen. Something told her that if she went back the same way she came, she would not make it alive. Ako stood frozen, staring into the thick trees where the white bird had disappeared. Her hands trembled as she grabbed the sack of firewood. Do not go back the way you came. The bird's warning echoed in her mind. She turned and looked at the path she had walked earlier. The trail was still there, leading straight back home, but something felt wrong. The forest seemed darker, the trees standing taller, as if they were closing in. Even the air felt heavier, making it hard to breathe. Ako's heart pounded. She had two choices: follow the same path home or trust the bird's warning, and found another way. She swallowed hard and turned in the direction the bird had flew. If the bird wanted to help me before, maybe it's trying to help me now, she whispered to herself. She stepped off the path and into the unknown, the deeper woods. The deeper she went, the stranger everything became. The trees here were older, their roots twisted like giant snakes. The air smelled different, damp, with a hint of something she could not name. The sound of rustling leaves followed her, but every time she turned, there was nothing. Was it the wind or something else? Then she heard it, a voice, a deep hushed whisper. Aku's body stiffened. She could not understand the words, but they felt close, too close. She picked up her pace, her heart pounding. Then a shadow moved. It was quick, just a flicker in the corner of her eye. Aku's breath caught in her throat. Was someone following her? She clenched her small knife tighter. Her feet moved faster, stepping over roots and falling branches, but the shadow followed. She could feel it now, a presence before her, watching, moving when she moved. Suddenly, a cold wind rushed through the trees, carrying a whisper that sent chills down her spine. Turn back, golden child. Turn back before it is too late. Ako's blood turned to ice. She wanted to run, but her feet felt heavier. Her whole body screamed at her to flee. But something told her running would be worst. Instead, she whispered, "Who are you?" Silence, then a laugh, low, slow, chilling. Aku took a shaka step forward, then another, and as she walked, the laughter faded. The shadows pulled back, and up ahead she saw it, a small narrow path, hidden behind thick veins. Aku's chest tightened. Was this the path she was meant to find? She reached forward and pushed the veins aside, and what she saw on the other side made her gasp. For a moment, she hesitated. Was this a trap? Or was this the way to safety? She had no time to think. Behind her, the whispering voice returned, growing louder. The shadow she had seen earlier frinkled again, moving closer. Aku took a deep breath and stepped onto the hidden path. A strange encounter. The moment she set foot on the path, the sounds of the forest changed. The whispering stopped. The cold wind disappeared. It was as if she had stepped into another world. She walked carefully, her heart still pounding. Trees stretched high above her, their leaves glowing with golden light. A soft mist coiled around her feet as she moved forward. Then she heard something new, humming, a soft, melodic tone drifting through the air. Aku froze. Up ahead, under a large tree, sat an old woman. Her back was bent with age, her skin wrinkled like the bark of a tree. She wore a feathered wrapper, and her hair was covered with a deep blue scarf. In her hands, she held a small wooden mortar and pestle, grinding something that smelled of herbs and spices. The old woman looked up and smiled. "Golden child," she said in a voice as smooth as flowing water, "you have finally come." Ako's body stiffened. How did this woman know her name? Who was she? The woman patted the ground beside her. "Come, child, sit with me." Ako's legs refused to move. Everything in her life had taught her to be careful. The world was full of people like Amma. People who smiled while hiding a knife behind her back. But something about this woman felt different. Not safe, but not dangerous either. Slowly, Aku stepped forward and lowered herself onto the ground. The woman smiled again and reached into a small gourd beside her. She scooped out a handful of white powder and sprinkled it into the mortar. Then she spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Your stepmother sent you into the forest to die, didn't she?" Ako gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. How did this woman know that? The old woman chuckled. "I know many things, my dear." She leaned forward and fixed Ako with sharp eyes. "And if you wish to survive, you must listen carefully." Ako swallowed hard. This was no ordinary woman. But at that moment, she had no choice but to listen. Ako's heart pounding as she stared at the old woman. How did she know about Amma? How did she know about the danger? The woman continued grinding the white powder in her mortar, her movements slow and steady. Then she looked up, her eyes sharp and knowing. The forest whispered secrets. "My child," she said, "it sees all, it hears all, and it has been watching you." Aku shivered. The way the woman spoke made it sound as if the forest was alive. The old woman set down her pestle and sighed. "Your stepmother thinks she has won. She sent you here, hoping the forest will swallow you. But she does not understand the way of the land." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You are no ordinary child, Ako. Ako's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? The old woman rushed out and touched Ako's forehead lightly. You were born with a light beside you, a light that wicked hearts cannot stand. That is why Amma hates you. This is why she wants you gone. Tears burned in Ako's eyes. All her life, she had tried to be good, tried to obey, but no matter what she did, Amma still despised her. The old woman studied her face. Do you wish to go back home, child? Aku nodded slowly. Yes, but not to suffer again. The woman smiled. Then you must be wise. The journey back will not be easy. There are dangers ahead, but if you do exactly as I say, you will make it. Aku sat up straighter, wiping her tears. Tell me what to do. The woman nodded and reached into the gourd again, pulling out a small clay pot. She placed it gently in Aku's hands. Inside this pot is a special ash. She explained, it will protect you from evil, but listen carefully. Do not open it unless you are in a great danger. Aku looked down at the pot. It was small and light, the lid sealed tight. The woman continued, on your way home, you will reach a crossroad. One path will look bright and easy, the other dark and narrow. She fixed Aku with a serious look. No matter what, take the dark path. Aku's stomach tightened. But why? The old woman's expression darkened. The bright path is a trap. It will lead you into the hands of something worse than death. Aku shielded. The woman patted her knee. Now go. And remember, trust your heart, not your eyes. Aku clenched the clay pot tightly as she stood. She did not fully understand everything the woman had said, but she knew one thing. She had been given a chance to escape. She bowed her head in gratitude. Thank you, ma'am. The old woman simply smiled. We shall meet again, golden child. As Aku turned to leave, a strange feeling washed over her. It was as if she had just stepped onto the path she was always meant to follow. The journey home had begun, and whatever lay ahead, she would face it. Aku moved swiftly through the forest, gripping the small clay pot tightly in her hands. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. No matter what, take the dark path. The trees whispered around her, their branches swirling as if watching her every move. The golden light that had surrounded the old woman's resting place had faded, replaced by the deep shadow of the wide forest. Aku's leg ached, but she didn't stop. She had to find a way home. Then, after what felt like hours, she saw the crossroad. Aku froze. Before her were two paths, just as the old woman had warned. The first path was wide and beautiful. It was lined with bright flowers, and the air smelled of fresh fruit. Sunlight streamed through the trees, making the ground glow warmly. It looked safe, inviting. The second part was the complete opposite. It was narrow and dark, the trees thick and twisted, their roots jutted out like the fingers of a buried monster. A cold wind whispered through the air, sending a chill down Ako's spine. Her instinct screamed at her to take the bright path, but she remembered the old woman's warning. Trust your heart, not your eyes. She bit her lips. Could the old woman have been wrong? Just then, a soft voice called out, Ako, my dear child, come this way. Aku's breath caught in her throat. She turned and gasped. Standing at the entrance of the bright path was Amma. But something was wrong. Amma was smiling warmly, her arms opened wide. She was dressed in fine clothes, her skin glowing with health. She looked nothing like the cruel stepmother Ako had left behind. Come, my child, Amma said sweetly. Why are you afraid? This is the way home. Ako's heart pounded. How was Amma here? How did she find her? Then a hand touched her shoulder. Ako spun around and saw something even more shocking. It was her mother, the mother she had lost as a baby. She stood at the entrance of the bright path, her face soft and kind. Ako, my darling, her mother said gently, come with me, I have been waiting for you. Ako's knees weakened. Her mother, her real mother. Tears welled in her eyes. She had no memory of her mother, but inside her she has always wished to see her again. For a moment, she took a step forward. Then a sharp cry echoed through the air. A white bird swooped down from the tree, flapping its wings wildly. Aku gasped and stumbled back. In that instant, everything changed. Aman's warm smile twisted into a wicked grin. Her fine clothes turned into a wicked rags, and her skin became dry and cracked like old clay. Her mother vanished like smoke, leaving behind only a foul smell. The bright part itself began to flicker, unveiling what lay beneath. A bottomless pit, filled with riddle, shadowing hands reaching up, ready to pull her in. Ako's blood ran cold. It was a trap. She turned and ran towards the dark path without looking back. As soon as she set foot on it, the bright path disappeared. The illusion was gone. Ako gasped for air, clenching the clay pot to her chest. She had almost fallen for it. She had almost been lost forever. But now she knew the truth. The evil that chased her was stronger than she had ever imagined. And if she wanted to survive, she would have to be stronger too. The forest was different now. It no longer felt like a trap, no longer whispered threats in the wind, but it was still unfamiliar. The trees stretched endlessly, their branches waving together like a giant maze. She had no food, no water, no sense of direction, but she had something stronger: hope. With every step, she reminded herself of where she was going: home. The kind stranger. As nights fell, Aku's body grew heavier. Her stomach ached with hunger. Her lips were dry. Her feet sore. Just as she was about to collapse, she saw it. A small hut in the distance, nested between two large trees. Smoke rose from each thatched roof, and the warm glow of firelight flickered from inside. Aku hesitated. Was he safe? She had learned not to trust too easily. The world was full of danger. But she had no choice. If she didn't find food and water soon, she would not survive the journey home. Summoning her last bit of strength, she walked towards the hut. She reached the doorway and knocked weakly. For a moment there was silence. Then the door cracked open, revealing an old woman with kind eyes. Her face was wrinkled with age, her hair wrapped in a deep blue cloth. She studied Ako carefully, her gaze filled with both curiosity and concern. You have traveled far, child, the woman said. Her voice was gentle, soothing. Come in. Ako hesitated. The last old woman she had met had given her golden ash, but had also left her to face great dangers alone. Could she trust this one? But hunger and exhaustion won over fear. She stepped inside. A safe haven. The hut was small but warm. A fire cracked in the corner, filling the air with the scent of roasted yam. Bundles of dry herbs hung from the ceiling, and clay pots lined the shelves. The old woman handed Aku a wooden bowl filled with hot porridge. Eat, she said, you need your strength. Aku took a hesitant bite. Warmth spread through her body, soothing her aching lips. She hadn't realized how much she needed food until that moment. The woman watched her with careful eyes. You are running from something, she said. It was not a question. Ako swallowed. I am trying to go home. The woman nodded. And what awaits you there? Aku hesitated. She thought of Amma, the hatred in her eyes, the way she had treated her like a servant, like nothing. She thought of her father, silent and distant, unwilling to protect her. Would home even feel like home anymore? I don't know, she admitted. The old woman sighed. The past is heavier, child, but you must face it if you ever want to be free. Aku lowered her eyes. She had been running for so long, first from Amma, then from the spirit, and from death itself. But the woman was right. She couldn't keep running forever. She had to face Amma. She had to claim her place in the world. The old woman let Ako rest for the night. In the morning, she handed her a small leather pouch. This will help protect you, she said. Ako opened it. Inside was a handful of fan, silver powder. What is it? Aku asked. The woman smiled. The dust of truth. When the time comes, you will know how to use it. Aku nodded. She didn't fully understand, but she knew one thing: this journey was not over. Amma had tried to break her, but she was still standing, and she was ready to go home. Aku left the old woman's house at dawn. The sky was painted with soft hues of orange and pink, and the forest was alive with the songs of waking birds. The small bunch of silver dust was tucked safely in her cloth wrapper. She didn't know what power it held, but the old woman's word echoed in her mind. When the time comes, you will know how to use it. She hoped that time would not come too soon. Footstep in the shadows. The journey was slow. Her body was still weak from days without proper rest, but determination pushed her forward. She had come too far to give up now. By midway, she reached the edge of the forest. Beyond this stretched an open path, winding towards the distant hills. Somewhere beyond those hills were her father's compound. Home. But as she stepped onto the path, a strange feeling crept over her. She was being watched, her eyes darted around, scanning the trees, the bushes, the shadows, but she saw nothing. Yet the feeling remained. She quickened her pace. Then a rustling sound behind her. She spun around. Nothing. Her heart pounding. Was it just the wind, or was something or someone following her? She tightened her grip on the punch and kept walking. A dangerous meeting. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, Aku reached a small stream. She knelt to drink, letting the cool water soothe her parched throat. Then a voice. So you made it alive. Aku's body stiffened. Slowly she turned. A young man stood a few feet away, leaning against a tree. His arms were crossed over his chest, and a sly smile placed on his lips. Aku's breath caught. She knew him. It was Kwenku, Amma's nephew. Fear surged through her. If Kwenku was here, that could only mean one thing. Amma knew she was alive, and she had sent someone to stop her. Kwenku stepped closer, his dark eyes gleaming. I must admit, he said, I didn't expect you to survive the forest. Amma will not be pleased. Ako swallowed hard, trying to keep her face calm. How did you find me? Kwenku chuckled. Amma has her way. She knew you wouldn't die so easily. She knew you would try to return. His smile faded and his expression darkened. But you shouldn't have. Ako's finger brushed against the punch of silver dust. She had no weapons, no strength to fight. She had only her wits. Why do you help her? Ako asked, keeping her voice steady. She treats you no better than a servant. Kwenku tightened. Amma is powerful. She rewards those who are loyal. Really? Then why are you out here chasing after a girl she tried to kill? If she values you so much, why send you instead of calming herself? Kwenku hesitated. A flicker of doubt crossed his fear. Aku pressed on. She is using you, Kwenku, just like she used my father, just like she used everyone in that house. When she has no more use for you, she would throw you away. Kwenku fist clicked, but he said nothing. Aku took a small step back. You can still walk away, she said. You don't have to do this. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Kwenku sighed. You always were clever, Ako. He took a slow step back. I won't stop you, he said, but Amma will not let this go. She will find you. Then, before Aku could say anything else, he turned and disappeared into the trees. Aku exhaled sharply, her heart still racing. She had escaped for now, but she knew Kwenku was right. Amma would not stop hunting her. And the closer she got to home, the more dangerous thing would become. But Aku was not the same helpless girl who had left that house. She has survived the forest. She has faced the dead. She has escaped Amma's trap before. And she would do it again. Clenching the pot of silver dust, she stepped back into the road. No more running. It was time to finish this. She reached the compound. Just as darkness settled over the land, the gate was still the same, tall, wooden, and carved with her father's ancestral symbols. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The courtyard was empty, but she could hear voices coming from the main house. Her heart pounded as she stepped forward. Then a sharp voice rang out. Who is there? Aku turned. A young servant girl stood by the doorway, staring at her with wide eyes. Then recognition flashed across her face. Aku? Before Aku could respond, the girl turned and ran into the house, shouting, She's back! She is back! Aku's chest tightened. Within moments, footsteps thundered towards her, and then she saw him, her father. He stood at the doorway, his face unreadable. For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Aku swallowed her father. His eyes flinched with something relieved, guilt. But then, before he could speak, a cold, sharp voice cut through the silence. She had returned from the dead. Aku stiffened. She knew that voice. Amma. Amma stepped into the courtyard, her face twisted in mock surprise. She was dressed in a fine wrapper, her hair neatly tied, her gold earrings. She looked Aku up and down, her lips coiling. So you survived, she said, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. Aku lifted her chin. Yes. Amma let out a soft chuckle. I must say, I am impressed. But tell me, child, where have you been all this time? Aku clenched her fist. You know where I was. You sent me to die. Gasps erupted from the servant who had gathered to watch. Her father's expression darkened. What is this nonsense? Amma turns to him, shaking her head dramatically. You see, my husband, the girl has returned with wild accusation after everything I have done for her. Aku stepped forward. Father, you have to believe me. She... Amma raised a hand. Enough. Her voice was sharp now, all pretense of kindness gone. Then she turned to the servant. This girl is a liar, a thief, a disgrace to this house. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Aku's heart pounding. Amma was doing what she did best, twisting the truth. And her father, he was saying nothing, just standing there, silent. Aku's breath caught. Would he really let Amma do this again? Would he let her be cast out once again? Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. If he would not fight for her, she would fight for herself. Slowly, she reached into her wrapper and pulled out the small punch. The dust of truth, the truth unleashed. The servant whispered, their eyes wide with curiosity. Amma frowned. What is that? Aku took a deep breath. Then, in one swift motion, she opened the punch and flinged the silver dust into the air. A gust of wind carried it, swirling like tiny stars. The moment it touched her, she let out a sharp gasp. Her body stiffened, her eyes widened in shock, and then the truth spilled from her lips. I lied. The words came out in a strange cry. The crowd fell silent. Amma's hand flew to her mouth, as if trying to stop herself from speaking, but the magic was too powerful. I tried to kill Ako. She gasped. I sent her into the forest to die. I poisoned her father's mind. I wanted her gone because I envied her. Then the servant erupted in murmurs. Ako turned to her father. His face was pale, his eyes filled with disbelief. Amma, he whispered, his voice shaking. Amma fell to her knees, her body trembling. I didn't mean. But it was too late. The truth has been spoken, and nothing could take it back. The courtyard was silent. The servants stood frozen, their eyes darted between Amma and Ako. The truth has been spoken, but no one knew what would happen next. Amma knelt on the ground, shaking, her hands gripping the earth as if she could bury her own words. Her father staggered back, as if struck by an invisible blow. His face was unreadable, his lips slightly parted. Then he turned to Ako. His voice was hoarse. Is it true? Aku swallowed hard, the weight of everything crushing her. Yes, father. She tried to kill me. She sent me into the forest with nothing. She made you believe I was unworthy of your love. Amma let out a strange cry. She's lying, but no one believed her anymore. The murmurs among the servants grew louder. Some of the elders who had gathered outside began stepping forward. One of them, an old man with a walking stick, shook his head. We always knew something was not right. Another woman, a market trader, whispered, I remember how she treated you like a servant. The word, the truth, was spreading. Amma looked around widely, her breathing uneven. You fools, do you think you can turn against me after all I've done to this family? She turned to Ako's father, her voice desperate. My husband, you cannot believe this child over me. I have been loyal to you. I have. But Ako's father raised a hand. His face was unreadable. Then, in a low, steady voice, he said, Enough. Amal's mouth snapped shut. He took a deep breath, as if trying to steady himself. For years, I trusted you. I let you poison my heart against my own child. His voice cracking with emotion. I turned away from Ako when she needed me the most. I failed her. Ako's chest tightened. She had waited so long to hear those words, but they did not erase the pain. Her father turned back to Amma. His expression hardened. But you, he said, his voice now like stone, you will answer for what you have done. Amma's eyes widened in terror. No, she whispered. Please, my husband, you cannot do this to me. But there was no mercy left in his eyes. He turns to the elders. I leave her fate in the hands of the council. Let the village decide. The village elders gathered that night. Men and women, young and old, came to hear the full truth. Amma was meant to sit in the center of the gathering, her once proud face now hollowed with fear. One by one, people spoke against her. Servants who had seen her cruelty, market women who had witnessed her deceit, even children who had whispered of her wickedness. The weight of her sin crushed her. The chief elder rose from his seat. His voice was firm. Amma, for your evil deeds, you are banished from this village. You will leave before the sun rises, and you will never return. A loud gasp ran through the crowd. Amma let out a wail. No! You cannot cast me out. Where will I go? But no one spoke for her. She had no alliance left. The dawn of a new beginning. Before the first light of dawn, Amma was escorted out of the village. She looked back once, her eyes filled with rage and bitterness. Then she disappeared into the wilderness, swallowed by the very darkness she had tried to cast on Akko. Akko watched her go, her heart heavy with unburdened. It was over. The storm had passed. Her father stood beside her, his face weary. I do not deserve your forgiveness, he says softly, but I hope you can find it in your heart to one day forgive me. Aku did not answer right away. Forgiveness was not easy, but she knew one thing, she would no longer carry the weight of the past. She turns to face the rising sun. A new day has come, and she was ready to embrace it. I cannot change the past, Aku's father said, but I can spend the rest of my life making it up to you. If you will let me. Tears welled in Aku's eyes. For so long she had wished for this moment. It would take time to heal. The wounds Amma had left were deep, but for the first time she saw truth regrets in her father's eyes, and that was a start. She reached for his hands, squeezing it gently. I will try, she whispered. A tear slipped down his chest. But this time it was not from sorrow, it was from hope, a future of her own choosing. As the days passed, I could find herself stepping into a new life, one she had never imagined. The end. Thank you for watching this story. Hi, besties. What moral lesson did you learn from this story? Kindly share your thoughts with me in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye for now.